We'll call the meeting to order for the PPACG CAC. And this will be my first time. Ed Dill's chairing it, and I, to my right, definitely miss our former chair. Look to her expertise and guidance here. Look great there. Okay. Anyway, on introductions, I believe we have two new members, and Kathy from Calhan and Summer from Fountain. If you'd like to say anything, Kathy's in the room with us. I'll defer to her first. If you have anything you'd like to say. Trying to get the microphone going. Here we go.
Okay. Well, once I figure out all the technical equipment here, just want to say I'm pleased to be a part of this committee, and I feel like I've got a lot to learn, and so we'll just work on absorbing the material, and I look forward to being informed and being a part of the process here.
We're grateful to have you. And I believe Summer is online from Fountain, I believe. You have her, Jared?
That's Summer. Fountain.
She's in there. Summer, go ahead and unmute if you are able to.
Hi, this is Summer.
Hi, we can hear you. Yeah, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the committee, and if there's any comments you have.
I do not have any comments because you guys are doing so much that I feel like I'm way in over my head, but I will do a brief introduction. My name is Summer Earthsong. I'm a dispatcher with Fountain Municipal Transit, and they've asked me to represent Fountain on the Citizens Advisory Committee. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm super ready to learn lots.
Thank you, and we're very glad to have you. You'd be a great addition. Okay, is there anyone else that we need to introduce or point out?
From the PPACG side, we have hired a new transportation planner. You might recognize her. Jessica Bechtel has come back to PPACG to join our transportation group, and we are very excited.
We're glad to have you back. Okay, is that all the introductions we have? Anyone else? If not, we'll move on and to the agenda. If we can get a motion to approve the agenda, if you've all had an opportunity to read it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. This is Miley Foster.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Kathy Heisey second. Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll move on to a vote. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the agenda passes. Okay, we'll move on to consent items, which is number 3 on your agenda. And what we need to do is look at the minutes. Have you all had an opportunity to review the minutes? And if so, we'll take a motion on those.
The only change that I request is that it says meeting agenda instead of meeting minutes.
I see that. Okay,
I never even read the heading.
now that you pointed it out, I see that as well, but I didn't notice it before. Did everybody online follow that on the heading of the minutes? It says meeting agenda instead of meeting minutes, and that would be a correction. And other than that, if we have a motion to accept the minutes from last meeting, I would entertain that at this time.
This is Gary Sugar. I move that the minutes from the previous meeting be approved.
And do we have a second?
I second, except this is Ann, but
yes.
Can you I'm on Zoom. Can you tell me how I can see it on Zoom? I don't see it. I don't have it printed out.
Okay.
Because
yeah, it was emailed out, but Jared, is that something you can bring up briefly for Ann to look at?
And it should be sharing a screen. So if it's not, we'll need to diagnose that.
see where it says
I just see our pictures.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's shared here.
Maybe
Well, trust us, it says meeting agenda.
I believe you. I did read it, before the meeting started. There, I see it.
Okay,
Thank
okay,
you.
okay.
Thank you, Jared.
Just needed a refresh.
Okay, and you still second it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to a vote. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the minutes pass. Okay, moving on to item 4, public comments and presentation.
Don't believe we've received any public comments, and I do not believe there are any members of the public here to make any comments today.
Okay, seeing none, we'll continue on then. Item 5A, action items, and I believe we have, who's presenting that today? Think we have a substitution?
So I am not Ann, as you
Okay.
can probably find out. So I will do my best to be Ann. But action 5A, the Water Quality Management Committee met this morning to consider the site location amendment request from Colorado Springs Utilities. And what this is, they did a pilot project at the J.D. Phillips Water Resources Recovery Facility. And it was a pilot project. And I'm going to read a little bit from it, but it turned out to be very good. And what they're trying to do is lower the amount of phosphorus going back into the system. It turned out to do that very well, better than they expected. And so they want to turn this pilot project into a permanent project. And so that is what this application is formalizing. So we see this as what's called a Section 208 agency. We are one of several entities. And so if you look on pages 11 and 13, you'll see that we are Section 208 designated planning agency. We are one of several people who review this, along with management agencies, city and towns, or county if it's an unincorporated part of the county, local public health, other federal state agencies that it would apply to, and any other basin water quality authorities that this applies to. So this is for our portion, the Section 208. Water Quality Management Committee met this morning and recommended approval to the Board of Directors. And so this is what this is recommending as well, for the Board of Directors to consider approval at their meeting on February 8th.
Have a question?
I do, if I can figure this out, yes. I'm sorry, I should have looked this up. Could you tell us exactly where the Phillips facility is? What waterways is it close to?
It is, I got the address, but I don't know where the address is. 155 Aeration View, area code 80907. I was about to say, I don't have my phone with me, unfortunately.
It is being looked up at this time.
So what was the address again? We'll put it in the.
It is 155 Aeration View.
So is that on a waterway? I serve on the Fountain Creek Watershed District Advisory Committee,
Mhm.
and I'm just wondering which body of water it would be close to since.
So
Show you a
Oh,
picture.
thank you. I should have.
Yeah.
I know it does discharge in the Fountain Creek watershed.
Mhm.
For those online, it's Mark Dabbling, Garden of Gods Road,
Yep.
draining into Fountain Creek.
So this is an existing project. This was a pilot project. They want it worked, and so they want to actually implement it on a permanent basis. So this isn't any change in that it'll stay there because it works so well.
I thought that was very interesting about the paddles, whatever you called them.
Baffles was the word they use. I couldn't tell you what a baffle is.
Yeah. Very interesting. Good.
Are there any questions online? I'm not seeing any hands raised, but want to make sure we cover everyone. We don't want to let Jared sit down without too many questions. So, no, any other comments or questions on this subject? Okay. Well, thank you, Jared, and I think we need to move on as an action item for a motion and a vote on this. So any discussion at all? I want to make sure we cover this. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to a motion to accept.
Okay, this is Miley. I'll propose, I recommend approval of the site location application amendment request for utilities J.D. Phillips Water Resource Recovery Facility.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And I had a second from Kathy Heisey. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So that passes. Is that just feedback or did somebody say something?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on then. We'll go to item 6 and I believe Danelle, you're up for that.
And I will introduce this item, and then we have two individuals from CDOT who are on the line to give you the updated presentation and answer any questions. So today we have an item for, this is just an informational item at this time, and it's for CDOT transportation target setting. And then we'll talk about two different sets of performance measure targets. The first are pavement performance, and the second are system performance. And these are set, I believe the pavement performance are set with a 2-year target and a 4-year target. And the system performance is set every 4 years. And these are developed by CDOT, but also under federal regulations as the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for our Colorado Springs urbanized area. PPACG is required to either develop our own targets or support the CDOT targets. And in the past, we have chosen to support the CDOT targets. I believe staff will again this year be recommending that we support the CDOT targets, and that action item will come back to TAC and to the board next month. Jared, would you like to walk through these slides? And I believe we have the new presentation up on the screen.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to do so. Good afternoon. My name is Jacob Kirschner, and I'm the Performance Data Manager at CDOT. Today, I'm going to discuss the federally required national performance measures. Next slide, please. So just to start off, I want to provide a quick overview about CDOT. CDOT exists to ensure that Colorado has a safe and efficient highway system by building and maintaining interstates, U.S. highways, and state highways. To accomplish this goal, CDOT conducts 3 primary services: snow and ice operations, roadway maintenance and preservation, and construction management. Additionally, CDOT performs traffic monitoring, avalanche control, rockfall mitigation, transit development, and traffic and safety education. CDOT also supports aviation interests statewide through the Division of Aeronautics. Next slide, please. One of CDOT's many programs includes the Performance and Asset Management branch. This branch leads CDOT's asset management, performance management, risk and resilience, and economic analysis programs. The Performance and Asset Management branch empowers CDOT's strategic planning and decision-making by providing tools to measure, analyze, forecast, and communicate the performance of the department's asset programs and investment decisions to staff and transportation stakeholders. The performance program is responsible for facilitating CDOT's transportation performance management. Next slide, please. Transportation performance management is a strategic approach that uses system information to make investment and policy decisions to achieve national performance goals. TPM is a key part of CDOT's strategic approach to making investment decisions by using goals, measures, and data to make better informed decisions. TPM also helps CDOT work towards achieving a better performing transportation system by setting targets, developing plans, reporting results, and being accountable for performance. Next slide, please. The Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act, signed into law in 2012, included several provisions that collectively transform the Federal Service Transportation Program to be focused on transportation performance management. In 2015, the FAST Act was signed into law, which provided long-term funding certainty for surface transportation infrastructure planning and investment. The FAST Act requires state DOTs and MPOs set targets for and report on the progress of performance metrics related to the surface transportation system. State DOTs are responsible for setting 2- and 4-year data-informed targets and for managing performance to make progress towards the targets they established. MPOs are responsible for establishing 4-year data-informed targets. The national performance measures focus on 3 key goal areas: safety, infrastructure condition, and system performance. Today, we're going to focus on infrastructure condition and system performance, also known as PM2 and PM3. Next slide, please. PM2 establishes the process for state DOTs and MPOs to establish and report their pavement and bridge targets. The pavement performance measures focus on the condition of the interstate system and non-interstate national highway system. The bridge performance measures focus on the condition of bridges on the national highway system. Next slide, please. PM3 establishes the process for system performance targets. System performance targets can be broken down into 3 subcategories: system reliability, congestion and multimodal travel, and CMAC. System reliability sets targets for the percent of person miles traveled on the interstate and non-interstate national highway system that are reliable, and it also sets a target for the truck travel time reliability index. For the congestion and multimodal travel and the CMAC performance measures, only applicable urban areas and MPOs are required to establish targets. Currently, Pikes Peak area does not meet the applicability and is not required to establish these targets. Right now, that's just Dr. Cog and the North Front Range MPO. Next slide, please. Illustrated here is a timeline of the completed first performance period and then the current second performance period. The first performance period began in 2018 and was the first rollout of the national performance measures. The first performance period concluded in 2021 and progress was reported to the Federal Highway Administration. For the second performance period, CDOT was required to establish 2023 and 2025 targets by October 1st, 2022, which CDOT accomplished. The MPOs then had 180 days from then to establish a 4-year target for 2025, which is March 30th, 2023. Next slide, please. FHWA guidance states that targets should be achievable and based on analysis of trends and future projections. Establishing data-driven targets enables decision makers to utilize resources in ways that will result in increased accountability and transparency by allowing the public to better understand expectations and expenditure results. Once again, state DOTs must establish 2- and 4-year targets, while MPOs are only required to establish a 4-year target. Those 4-year targets may be adjusted at the midpoint, which is 2023. 2-year targets may not be adjusted. When establishing targets, state DOTs must coordinate with MPOs to ensure consistency to the maximum extent practical. Next slide, please. CDOT and regional FHWA representatives communicate regularly with the Colorado MPOs about performance measures and targets, data collection, and asset management practices. This coordination happens monthly through the statewide MPO meetings and the Colorado Transportation Asset Management User Group. Additionally, CDOT coordinates with planning partners to provide inventory and condition data relevant to MPO boundaries, and we also include historical data so that MPOs can better understand trends and help project future performance. Next slide, please. CDOT established targets for the national performance measures in support of expectations outlined in long-range plans at CDOT. Those include the long-term national infrastructure and system reliability performance goals, the state asset management plan, transportation plan, transit plan, 10-year vision plan, and the statewide transportation improvement program. In this slide, I do have a hyperlink to each of the long-range plans if you're interested in seeing any more about those plans. In addition to long-range planning documents, CDOT used data models to analyze trends and project future performance. Targets are vetted by an oversight committee and are finalized by the CDOT executive director. Next slide, please. So the FHWA will determine that a state DOT has made significant progress towards the achievement of each 2 or 4 year applicable target if either the actual performance level is better than the baseline or the actual performance level is equal to or better than the established target. If the FHWA determines that a state DOT has not made significant progress, the state DOT must develop a report which includes a description of the actions the state DOT will undertake to achieve these targets in the future. Financial restrictions do occur if a state DOT does not meet minimum thresholds for poor pavement on the interstate or for bridges in poor condition on the national highway system. MPO funding is not affected by the results of the national performance measures. Additionally, MPOs are not required to submit a report to the FHWA. Next slide, please. And so finally here illustrated are CDOT's 2 and 4 year targets for PM2 and PM3. Starting with the percent of pavements on the interstate system in good condition, a 2-year target of 45% and a 4-year target of 47%. For the interstate in poor condition, 4% and 3.5%. For the non-interstate national highway system in good condition, 42% and 43%. And for the non-interstate national highway system in poor condition, both a 2 and 4 year target of 3.5%. Moving on to bridge, for the percent of national highway system bridges in good condition, a 2 and 4 year target of 36%. And for the poor condition, a 2 and 4 year target of 4%. And finally, the system performance targets, the percent of person miles traveled on the interstate that are reliable, a 2-year target of 81% and a 4-year target of 79%. For the non-interstate national highway system that is reliable, 93% and 94%. And for the truck travel time reliability index, a 2 and 4 year target of 1.46. Next slide, please. If you would like more information on CDOT programs which support the achievement of the national performance measures, they are listed here on this slide. Next slide, please. And finally, if you would like more information on CDOT programs, and finally, for more resources regarding the national performance measures and to see how CDOT or Pikes Peak area have performed historically, linked are some great resources. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I want to thank you for your time. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Any questions that I can address right now?
I have one from Miley here.
Yes, this is Miley. I have a question on the performance period targets. That was on your page 13 slide. So that means that there's 50% of the pavement, as an example, that is neither good nor poor. So what does that mean? It's like survivable or average or?
So it is federal pavements ranked on, or not ranked, but its condition is good, fair, or poor. So we're only federally required to establish a poor target and a good target. So what you're not seeing there is just the percentage left over that's fair.
Okay, and the reason why our federal government doesn't want to have more good is just money, probably, right?
Yeah, so it's basically the idea is just to track your performance to better make investment decisions. And so understanding how much of your are in good condition is important, but also what it's really focused on and where financial restrictions can occur is the percent of pavement in poor condition. You really want to make sure that's below that 5% threshold.
Okay,
Can
great.
I
Thank
add
you.
something to that? Sorry, this is William Johnson. I'm also with CDOT. It's important to know that with the targets that you see there, were not established by FHWA, Federal Highway Administration. They were actually established by CDOT. And understand that there is a great divide between a poor road and a fair road. And also understand that a poor road does not necessarily mean an unsafe road. And don't think of a poor road as being the road that has potholes all over it. And I encourage you not to use that as sort of a reference. When we establish what is our good target, that is what we as CDOT are trying to achieve based on federal requirements, we're really doing a balancing act between ensuring that we're able to have good coverage of our pavement projects, having achievable targets, and making sure we have processes to support making prudent decisions with limited resources. So we absolutely invest in fair and poor roads, and we still want to make sure that we're keeping good roads good.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, I believe Roy has one. Yes, go ahead.
My questions have more to do with what makes a poor pavement. And I'm wondering, two issues that have come up in recent years are a concern that trash vehicles frequently are way overloaded, and overloaded vehicles put obviously pressure on the pavement. And in the past, we used to see frequently places where you needed to stop and have those large vehicles weighed to make sure they weren't doing that. I haven't seen one of those in years. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what makes a poor pavement. And some years back, I was part of a group that sponsored regional discussion of what's happening in Nebraska, Canada, and Arizona, where they're using shredded rubber in pavement. And it makes the pavement last longer, which is a real positive, but it also makes the pavement incredibly quieter. So going through municipal areas, that would seem like a good idea. So if you're concerned about the condition of the pavement, I'm wondering, what is it that makes the pavement not good? And are you considering other options that are used elsewhere to increase the lifetime of the pavement? Thanks.
Can I hit this first, Jacob?
Yep.
Let me give you an order of magnitude here. So what's required for target setting, and this applies to CDOT as well as the Pikes Peak Council of Governments, so the MPO area there, is for us to establish those targets and try to achieve those targets for interstate and NHS, National Highway System. So the order of magnitude is, in Colorado, there's probably about 90,000 centerline miles of public roadway. CDOT owns and operates about 9,000 miles, and that includes every single mile of the interstate. Out of that 9,000 miles, roughly half of that is interstate and national highway system. And I will probably get this stat wrong. Correct me here, Jacob. I believe that Pikes Peak area owns roughly, I want to say between 100 and 150 centerline miles of national highway system. So these are, you can think of these as being like the major roads. Maybe the roads that garbage trucks stop on, but it's not necessarily going to be like the local roads that garbage trucks are going to be stopping on, or that heavy trucks are going to be stopping on. These are roads that are built to move things. But a little bit more directly in your question, what constitutes poor? The pavement performance measure is what we call a multi-part performance measure. It is based on 4 distresses. One of them is colloquially called IRI. It stands for International Roughness Index. It's basically a measure of roadway smoothness. Then you also have rutting, cracking, and faulting. Cracking and faulting really depends upon whether or not it's asphalt or concrete. Now, under the national performance measures, if 2 or more of those distresses fall under a certain threshold, then the roadway is considered a poor road. But it takes 2 or more of those thresholds to fall under a certain thresholds. And those thresholds CDOT doesn't determine what those thresholds are. They're established by FHWA. And when we go out and we collect data every single year on every inch of the national highway system, including those locally owned roadways, and you know, those dashboards that Jacob pointed you to has information on here's what the data is that we collected, as well as the current condition. But more importantly, it'll have information on what those thresholds are. So it's publicly facing, you're welcome to look at it. But ultimately, you know, it's machine collected, calibrated equipment. When we collect that information based on those thresholds, that's what determines what a poor roadway is. If your question is, sorry if I'm just sort of waxing poetic here and I'm probably giving you, you know, water through a fire hose, what makes a poor road poor? Well, it's a mix between usage, the type of usage, such as, you know, the weight of traffic, as well as environmental factors like weather. Of course, you could think of like snowplows aren't really good for roadway smoothness, but also snowplows cause a lot of potholes. And again, it's a trade-off of do you want the ability to travel and, you know, making sure that we're giving you access to have mobility or not have potholes. And notwithstanding that, you know, those trade-offs are understood. And so that's why we have treatments to make sure that we're getting you good snow clearance, but also as we're aware of the potholes, we're going to go through and identify those using our performance measures, using input from the public as they see those potholes, and making sure that we're prioritizing and addressing things appropriately. So sorry if that was an over answer.
No, thank you. I just wanted to know what made a poor road poor, and I believe you answered that. So thank you.
This is Miley. I'm kind of curious about the alternative road materials. Is that something that CDOT has on their radar? Like the recycled rubber?
Yeah, we have an entire pavement lab. It's located up in Denver, and they're really responsible for testing out the appropriate materials. I cannot give you specific information on where we apply those test subjects at, but I do know that we pay attention to what's going on. There's an organization called Transportation Research Board. They're responsible for a lot of the research that goes into not just the transportation industry, but also materials. And we carefully weigh out innovations within pavement with what actually works for Colorado. Not everything that you see, such as like rubberized roads or using roads that are reinforced with recycled plastic bags or roads reinforced with carbon fiber, are the most appropriate builds in Colorado. The other thing I would caution you about is we're aware of the effects of microplastics in the environment. And the roadway in and of itself I mean, you're putting rubber to the road literally. We understand that it is a source of toxic chemicals. So I'm not going to say that's preventing us from looking at innovation. I'm just saying we sort of have our finger on the pulse of it, and we make sure to test it so that it's the best for Colorado as far as drivers as well as the environment. But if you're looking for more information, you know, what I would say is that I think Jacob had that contact information slide. Go ahead and send us an email, and I'll get you in contact with someone directly.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment too? This is Ann.
Yeah, then you'll be after Ann. Okay. Go ahead, Ann.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Well, at our last meeting, we were talking about highway safety also. And I'm up in Green Mountain Falls, Highway 24, Ute Pass, that area. And there's a lot of traffic there, including huge trucks that come down from the gold mines and places like that. How I know that potholes are just a problem, you know, it just is. But is there anyone that we could contact to kind of lobby to see if they could paint the stripes on the road more often? Because visibility is a difficulty. It's narrow, you know, and to keep people in their lanes. It's been proven by the safety commissions all over the nation that those help in safety concerns. So I just wondered if there's someone we should talk to about that.
Well, I think you have the right people in the room, but maybe there's probably a need to discuss the process. Is my recommendation is those things are typically expressed to your MPO board, and your board will work with CDOT to make sure that the right roads are identified. But also we have a region office down there that closely coordinates with your board. So make sure you're communicating with your staff down there. And I believe Danelle is in the room, and make sure she knows what the area is. And you know, she should be able to have the right contacts for the CDOT region office. And I'm sorry, Ann, I missed the road. Was it a state highway?
It's US Highway 24.
Okay.
And it goes clear across Colorado. It goes a long way. It's one of the major routes through the Rockies, really.
Yeah, and Danielle, if you could take that down. I'm not sure if Wendy Pettit has a replacement just yet, but let me know if you need some guidance on who at the region office to talk to, please.
Thank you.
That's nice to know. I didn't know there was an MPO board and a regional something that you mentioned.
The PPACG board is the MPO board.
Oh, it is. Oh, well, okay.
It is. And just so you're aware, and the board and the county commissioners have mentioned that, and Shane Ferguson from CDOT is aware of that issue.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm sure it will come up again.
Well, I appreciate it. I know that we just have to keep mentioning it because they can't be everywhere to see what goes on. So I appreciate the time to tell you that again. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Gary Sugar. Back to the infrastructure condition targets for 23-25. Can you give us any idea of what the targets are for the surrounding states like Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico, Kansas?
Yeah, so I'm currently unaware of what the new targets will be, but they do present this information on the FHWA Transportation Performance Management webpage. There's dashboards on there which represent or show all targets for all 50 states. And you can also see progress towards how all 50 states are performing on there. And so the 2023 and 2025 targets will be available on that TPM dashboard in around June of 2023. But if you are interested, there is the 2019 and 2021 targets from the first performance period. It's the FHWA Transportation Performance Management website. I'll put a link in the chat of how to access that webpage.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That cover everything for you, Gary?
Yep.
If you could, Jacob, clarify one thing for me, truck travel time reliability, what does that actually mean?
So it is a measure of the 50th percentile of travel compared to the 95th percentile of travel. And so that's kind of a confusing way to say that. But so if you were a truck traveling on the interstate and you were traveling at free flow traffic or free flow travel, and then you take your actual travel time, and so you take those two numbers, and so say it takes 10 minutes free flow travel, it ends up taking you 15 minutes to actually travel that segment, you'll get a travel time index of 1.5. And so the segments are actually, they're much smaller than most segments are measured in. It'd be a 60-second travel over a 72-second travel. And so it's all these segments of the interstate system, and it's measured by the overall reliability of that. And so basically it's just a measure of congestion. And it's an idea that trucks can have a free flow travel on our interstates so that we're not delaying freight travel, which, leads to supply chain issues.
So the 1.46 is actually good.
It is good, yeah. The
Okay.
FHWA target aims to be, or what they consider reliable is under 1.5. So CDOT has established a target for reliable truck travel on our interstates.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We have another question here.
I could get carried away, so free.
Please, please.
I'm wondering, since we've been nationally noted for both the state and the city of Colorado Springs for our incredible fatality rate last year, if you all take any time to examine when there is an accident on these highways that we're talking about, to see if there was any way that the roadway or the lack of the correct amount of paint on the center or on the edge or anything else that's specific to the roadway itself had anything to do with the accident. Because isn't performance, isn't one of the goals is to help us keep safe on the roadway? So I'm just wondering if you do any kind of cross tabulation of accidents, where they occurred and what the condition of the roadway is or was at that time.
You want me to take this, Jacob, or you got it?
Yes, please, William. You could take it.
Yeah, so anytime a roadway, and I believe you talked about fatalities. Anytime a roadway fatality happens, really anytime a crash happens, a police report is supposed to be made. Based off of the information in the police report, and probably an expanded reporting if there is a roadway fatality, we have a traffic safety office that will take that information, and we have a model. And that model, it's something, it's both of them are called CMFs. That's crash modification factor and crash mitigation factor. The mitigation factor is what is the causation of the crash? And it focuses on primary, secondary, and tertiary factors. So let me break that down for you. Just as an example, speed could be like a primary causation, but there are certain things on the roadway that could have helped, such as speed bumps, such as cable barriers. So if you're familiar with the cable guardrails down the middle of the road, such as a curb and gutter, or even things such as, whether or not the traffic circles there that would actually slow down the speed. So we have a good understanding of what the elements of the roadway are in relation to those crash mitigation factors that are on there. And then we have and I may have got the CMFs mixed up. That's our problem with using the same acronym for different things. If we're looking at modification factors, those are the things that we could do on the road that, regardless of whether or not it was speed or distraction or inebriation, these are the things on the road that we can put down and build construction wise that could actually help prevent fatalities, save lives. So our model is robust enough for us to do that. And understand that, as you pointed out, there's a lot of fatalities on our roadways. It's sort of a national occurrence where we've seen this huge spike in fatalities that I want to say one of the catalysts was COVID, but we're just seeing this continuation. So it's not just Colorado or the Pikes Peak area that's experiencing it. And our traffic safety office is continuously modifying our approaches and our methodologies and refining what can we do on the roadway to help protect lives. So that does occur. I'd say, and I don't have much information on the community advisory committee. I would extend an offer, if our traffic safety group, if you wanted them to come in and talk about what is included within those traffic safety assessments and those post-event studies, let us know. And I think that we can contact somebody and arrange something at a future date.
Is there not an annual report on which factors were contributing to those fatalities? That would be easy. They're just an annual report that says here it was the center issue. Here it was.
No, I don't think for all 700 of our fatalities, we do that report. Jacob, are you aware of anything?
The only thing I'm aware of is we do break down fatality by type. So you are able to go in and see if there's the numbers regarding aggressive driving or impaired driving. So those would be some factors, but we don't have a report necessarily identifying all the factors for every fatality.
I would love it if someone could come and talk further about all this, as you mentioned.
Danelle, is that something that you've addressed in the past and brought people in?
I believe it has, but not in the near past. I can certainly reach out to CDOT and chat with them. We actually have, and I was trying to find an email because we did one of our staff members, actually, Jason O'Brien, did a safety kind of overview of recent trends to our board last month. So that might be of interest to the CAC, but we could also talk to CDOT about bringing someone in specific to the CDOT roads as well, if that would be something CAC would be
If
interested
that's
in.
something you can coordinate on the schedule.
Okay,
No rush, obviously, but
let me talk to those folks and see what we can do.
will that help? Okay.
So if there are any other cities, municipalities, or any other parts of the states that have done Vision Zero programs, which seem to be very successful elsewhere, that would be helpful to know. Thank you.
Hey, any additional questions? See none in the room. Any online, Jared? I don't. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, for a great presentation. Very informative.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to item 6B then. I believe, Jared, you're covering that.
I am. Thank you very much. So this is an information item that we provided to our board earlier this month. It's still January. This is our annual work program, and what this is as easy as say it's close to a goal setting. Obviously, knowing that things change throughout the year, but what this does is this is a document that we provide to our board on what we expect to carry out for the upcoming calendar year of 2023. And to make sure that the work that we're doing aligns with our strategic plan. As I mentioned, a lot of times things will come up throughout the course of a year, either by state statute or federal statute, either by coming up through our board or through one of our committees. That may change or may get added to this, but this is about as good as we can do for beginning of the year, what we plan to accomplish. I'm just going to go through a few highlights on terms of what 2023 is going to have for us. Within our area agency and aging, they're going to be completing what's called the 4-year plan. And that should actually be coming through within the next 6 weeks or so. Where they're in the final stages. They did several community conversations throughout 2022, throughout the 3-county region to go out in the community and try to figure out what exactly what people are looking for. We could have a pretty good idea just sitting in our offices, but it's a lot easier to go out there and actually hear to make sure that we're not missing anything or making sure that we're keeping track of what other people are saying. So our 4-year plan is going to be a big one. Within mobility, we are finalizing a mobility guide. We also received a grant from it's NACT, NADTC, National Aging and Disability Transportation Center, to pilot an on-demand travel model. While we do have fixed routes throughout the city and throughout the region, on-demand allows a lot more flexibility for someone who's needing to go to doctor's appointments, for someone who is wanting to go to social events or religious activities, really anything that they may need transportation for. It allows them a little more flexibility rather than waiting on a 1-hour leeway time for a bus or a fixed route system. Under our environmental planning, ozone is going to be a big topic. You're probably going to hear a lot from us this year. 2023 is going to be a very critical year for ozone measurements in terms of attainment versus non-attainment. Denver has been in non-attainment for, I believe, 20 plus years now. We are so far in attainment, but we need another good year this year to stay within attainment. If you're interested, the board also heard a presentation earlier this month, earlier in the meeting, that you can listen to, and they've got slides and that kind of thing. But we're going to be doing a lot more on that this upcoming year in terms of ozone and making sure that our levels stay good. With transportation, you're going to probably see a lot from Danelle and Jessica Bechtel behind me regarding the long-range transportation plan. A lot of those pieces have already been implemented, the congestion management process and the unified UPWP, Unified plan work program.
Planning work program.
Well, I almost had it 3 months in. I'm hoping to get these in. But that's a major undertaking, especially at the end of this year. I think you're going to be seeing Danelle and Jessica Bechtel a lot. Military planning, obviously we are unique in how we interact with our military. Wildfire planning is going to be a big part of that this year. Just making sure that with the wildland interface, especially with the United States Air Force Academy and Fort Carson Army Post, those areas, and working with the fire protection districts along with the military to make sure that we're doing what we can to have mitigation efforts in place, as well as this doesn't get into evacuation planning as much, but it's really that mitigation to make sure they have the resources to be able to support the civilian side of it, but working with the military to make sure that that's cohesive and there's not that line of separation. A big part that we're going to screen, this is something you haven't seen before, is economic development. We are in the middle, or we're at the very beginning of developing a comprehensive economic development strategy. You might hear it called CEDS as well. And what that process does, it allows a lot of agencies and organizations within our 3-county region to either qualify for grants they couldn't before, or better leverage grants at the federal level. And so we are looking to get that process done by October, as we have a grant from the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade that is supporting that. And so they are working with the council governments across the state to develop those CEDS documents so that it can roll up into a statewide CEDS document to be able to, again, leverage for those federal grants. That kickoff meeting, I believe, is coming up next month with stakeholders. I also want to point out, under administration, kind of under other, we are in the process of, I believe, the final stages of securing a grant navigator, specifically to navigate project opportunities within the IIJA, there's the IRA, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. IIJA is the Infrastructure and Jobs Act.
Yes, infrastructure, investment, and jobs.
Thank you. I'm trying to get all these acronyms. But we're in the final stages of looking to procure someone who can help, especially our smaller jurisdictions. To be completely honest, the larger ones, they have grant writers, they have grant staff, they're already doing that. But it's a lot of these smaller jurisdictions where that really need help to be able to leverage the resources, the technical expertise to put together the strongest grant applications. We've already got 2 of our smaller ones who are wastewater projects specifically, and there's a lot of competition in that. And we're really excited for this grant navigator position to hopefully start here, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Trying to go through. I think those are the main highlights. I'm happy to answer any other questions in terms of what we are planning on to accomplish and working on for 2023.
Any questions online?
This is Ann in Green Mountain Falls. I think this sounds really exciting. You've got big goals ahead. And I'm interested, of course, in grant help because it is difficult. It's very hard to get some of those done. And Green Mountain Falls is a very little town, but we're right in the middle of fire problems. In fact, I understand from our fire mitigation committee, and I'm on the planning commission, that we're #1 in the nation as far as danger from fire up here. So we're real interested in getting some help, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Jared, I do have a question on the military. The bases surround so many of our communities, and water is a big issue. Will you be working with them on water as well? I know they're kind of exempt from some of the state rules, but water is still critical. Aquifers run under everybody.
No, and water is a big one. I highlighted wildfire mitigation because that's really a big project for this year. But water is a big component of how we work with the military bases, especially along the Fountain Creek area. So you got Air Force Academy especially, but we work with the water districts within Monument area and kind of the Woodman Hills and in that area, as well as on the Fort Carson side, not just along Fountain Creek, but on the west side as well. just because of the water coming in from the mountains. So water is stormwater is probably more specific in terms of what they look at to make sure that it's discharging. I do know there is a I believe it's called the Prebles metal jumping mouse at
Correct.
the Air Force Academy. And so there's actually the concern is because my understanding is that erosion control as it goes through the Air Force Academy and making sure that it's basically not eating away too much of the land and then threatening the habitats and making sure we have good water quality.
I brought that up because years ago, Fountain area, Whitefield Security, all of that had issues with, I believe it was Peterson, and the runoff of the water contaminated their system. And that's why I wanted to make sure that was still a concern being addressed.
It's not so much on our side. So putting my old hat from public health world, I know, so you're talking about the PFAS.
Correct.
The perfluorinated carbon compounds, I believe. But yeah, that was very specific to Peterson Space Force Base now. That is really being coordinated more with the CDPHE side. I can even say locally, there's not a lot of, in terms of local public health, that's very much at the state level and EPA level.
Okay.
So,
hey, any other questions?
I'm sorry, I'm new and I could get carried away.
Great.
So I really am interested in the air quality. I've been monitoring the air quality committee for a number of years. And obviously there's a connection between vehicles and air quality. And so I set out to find out about the number of licensed drivers and the number of vehicles, because I've heard from a number of people that in Colorado Springs, we have more vehicles than we have licensed drivers, which is kind of interesting. I happen to live next to a city employee with 2 children, one of whom is in college. They have 4 vehicles and he also has a city vehicle. So they have 5 vehicles for 4. I'm not trying to signal him out or anything like that. But one of the things that was just dumbfounding to me, and perhaps PPACG could help as well, and I made call after call after call, and people from the state health department called me and told me they were dumbfounded because one of the things that I couldn't find and they couldn't find either is there's apparently no way to find out how many vehicles there are on military bases, that if they are only used on military bases, if they don't come out on state or local highways or roadways, they don't even have to be registered. And so there was no way to find out how many there are. And we have a lot of veterans at UCCS and a lot of students who tell stories about when they drove a tank at Fort Carson and whatnot. So I just think that there must be a large number and just of vehicles that we aren't counting. And I'm just wondering if PPACG makes an attempt to keep track of how many vehicles we have registered in El Paso County or our tri-county area.
I will say specific to military that there are just certain things that are just more difficult to obtain than others. That being said, we do have good partnerships with the base commanders. So I think it's something we can definitely look at, but I could also see that, yeah, if they're not, if there's no need to license them, for example, a tank, we probably don't have a lot of good data on that specifically. I will say, just kind of speaking closely to ozone, just because that is in the presentation, we have to have, I think 70 is the magic number, and it's a 3-year rolling average. This year, I think we have to be at 68 or 69 in order for that 3-year average to be below 70 for us to be in attainment. Last year was a very good year for ozone, relatively speaking. In that presentation, Dina does a fantastic job of going into those details. But yeah, speaking to military specifically, that can, they're great partners, but it can sometimes be difficult to get some of that information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Jared.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, we're moving along pretty fast today. Any announcements from members? I'll have one in a minute, but anyone else have announcements or comments?
So Scary Sugar. So I just have a question that maybe it could be answered in the future. When they installed the metered on-ramps, what I read in the paper was if the traffic on I-25 exceeded 45 miles an hour, that the metered lights would be turned off and you could just merge onto the highway. Many times, and I'm getting on at the Bijou exit, the traffic is doing 65 miles an hour and the metered lights are still on. So I'd like to know, how does that process work, or did they change that, or what's going on with that? Thank
I
you.
will follow up with CDOT and get an answer for you.
Anyone else? Anyone online with a question, comment, announcement? Okay, then I'll move into a couple of, since we have new members and this is a new year, would you like to have an updated group photo? I think Miley missed our last one. So maybe schedule that in March if that would work out. Any comments, suggestions, or? And would that work with you, Jared? I believe you're the official photographer. Yeah, okay, if what we really need everyone to do is in the March meeting, if you could be present here, that way Jared can get us all as a group, and that will be posted as the CAT group for this year.
And that date would be March 15th.
March 15th.
March 15th.
No,
22.
March, yes, March 22.
You'll be at not us.
Okay, if you can plan on that, put it on your calendar, and hopefully Welling's well and can be back by then, and I believe Terry should be back. Okay, another question I'd like to propose, or a comment to the CAC and have you think about it, is have some remote meetings, maybe 4 this year. And what I would like to see us do is some of the smaller communities, say Green Mountain Falls and up the pass, maybe Fountain, and maybe the Monument area, as well as Calhan-Rama, hold a meeting in each one of those, maybe one a quarter, and just kind of get out and let everybody else see what the rest of the region looks like and get to know some of the other people. And of course, the burden would go on Jarrett and Danelle setting everything up, but I think they're up for that. And just get some comments, feedback, see what you think. Yes.
I would say absolutely. And I go to meetings at Fountain. They have a really nice meeting room, technology and whatnot. I don't know about the other places. I don't know
I'm
how
up for
hard that's
that,
going to be to keep the people who are online. I don't know how difficult that will be in all those places. It would be easy in Fountain.
Yeah, Miley, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, that sounds great. I'd be interested in that. Just have to plan ahead, so.
Yeah, I would too. Up in the mountains, Woodland Park has a nice, fairly big meeting room. Ours is not real big in Green Mountain Falls, but
Okay.
Teller County, well, even farther. It's a big area up here. And go out on the plains and see all that too. That's important.
Okay. Then what I think we ought to do is say, Ann, in your case up the mountain, if you would like to send Jared a couple of options of places we could go. I can get with Kathy for the Calhan-Rama end of it and get Fountain. And I'm not sure, are we waiting for a new person for the Monument area?
Terry Hayes is from Monument, but she was unable to make it for
Here,
today's
okay,
meeting.
okay. Yeah, if we could just get some people to send some ideas into you, Jared, then next meeting we could discuss it and kind of get a plan put together as to when to do it. And yes.
Monument is the only area in our entire region that has a safe routes to school program. It happens to be something I'm particularly interested in. We used to have it in Colorado Springs. My daughter and her family live in California, and it's an incredible program when I go out there to visit. It's just amazing. And once again, we have this incredibly high traffic fatality for the city of Colorado Springs and for the state. And I think there's a lot more that we could do to address that. So if we're in Monument, I would love it if they could just, spend a couple of minutes saying what the program is and how it's working. They've had it for 3 years. They've built a trail system between 3 schools. They built a bridge over a spillway that kids can walk and ride bikes to school. And I'm just sort of dumbfounded that we don't have that here.
Yes, sir.
So I would say, kind of to your point, as we look at these things and go to these places. If we can coordinate or any kind of presentation from the host community, host environment, I think that is something Danelle and I could probably, literally to that point, if we wanted a presentation on that, that would obviously make sense.
It'd probably be something county highway transportation could help you with in that one.
That they have, so we would be doing all these individual cars.
I think it just gives us an opportunity to see what some of the other areas are like, because I doubt if too many people have been to Rama other than passing through in a hurry from the area I represent. And I don't frequently go up to Woodland Park, which I think it'd do us all well to see what the other community members are discussing when we come together. It makes it a little easier to agree or disagree or whatever as items are being presented. So anyway, if you can just give some ideas to Jared, email them into him, and people at the mountain, Kathy and I are from out east in Fountain, and we'll send an email to Terry, see if she can.
And I'm seeing Dr. Bowles as well from Park County. So if we want to go that far up.
Yes, way up there, it's beautiful up here and but yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll work on that then. Any other comments, announcements, or? And again, I've said this before, but I want to thank Miley for what she's done the last 2 years. This was my first day and it was a challenge.
You did great.
So,
You did
okay.
a very good job.
You did well.
Yes.
Survived it. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, we will be adjourned then.